This is Gemara Baba Kama Daf Sadi Dalid, and we're holding on the bottom of Sadi Gimel Amid Beis. We're approximately 8 lines from the bottom. First word on line is Bikala Ilan Deloy Avar Amar Abaye. And as we'll see very quickly, today's discussion will begin picking up Mamish where we left off yesterday as Abaye quotes that Rav Shimon ben Yehuda ben Shammai, Rav Elazar ben Yaakov, Shimon ben Elazar, Rav Yishmael, Kulu Svir Lahu, says Abaye, all these Tanaim hold, Shinoi b'mekaymai oimid. That a Shinoi, the change of an item, does not create a kinyan, does not cause the item to be changing Rishos into he who made the change, but rather Shinoi b'mekaymai oimid, even though there's a change and there's a physical change in the item, still it is in its original place. So begins the Gemara. Where do we see these 5 Tanaim again? Rav Shimon Yehuda ben Shammai, Rav Elazar ben Yaakov, Shimon Elazar, and Rav Yishmael. So we begin with number 1, Rav Shimon ben Yehuda, Hadam Aran. That's really how this whole conversation begins, which is taking off of yesterday's Gemara. Ben Shammai, 4 lines to the bottom. We learned in a Mishnah. If someone gives a woman chitin, wheat, in payment to have relations and payments for zinos, so the chitin is considered the esnan. The esnan referencing the pasuk in the Torah that discusses if one gives an esnan, a payment to a zayna for zinos, and then what happens? Vasan sayles, he gave her wheat kernels and they were made into flour, or zaytim, he gave her olives, Vaisa Hashem, they were made into oil, anavim, grapes, Vasan yayin, they were made into wine. So Tani Chad, one Brisa taught us that even the new entity, the flour, the oil, the wine, retain the status of being an esnan, which is what? That it's aser b'ana. Another Brisa says mutter. Another Brisa says it's mutter. V'amer Rav Yosef, and teaches Rav Yosef. Tini Gurion. Gurion taught us that someone's name, as we turn over to Sadi Dalid Amid Aleph. Tini Gurion Dime Aspairek, from the place of Aspairek. Beishamei Oishem Ubeis Hillel Matirim. That the stira between these two brises is 2 different opinions. Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai say that the item still retains its status. Why? Like we're quoting, Shinoi b'mekaymai oimid, it does not effect an acquisition. Therefore, it still has the din of an esnan. Beis Hillel says it's matirin because it's no longer the same item that was given. Says the Gemara, my time to Beis Shammai. Where does Beis Shammai come from? Amar Kra, says the pasuk in Dvarim, Gam Shneim the rabbis Shinu Yehem. Says the pasuk with regarding the payment of a esnan, Gam Shneim, also both of them, which is the rabbis Shinu Yehem, that even if they change forms, they're still aser as the esnan. They and not their changes. In classical terms, Gemara says, okay, so what does Beis Shammai do with Beis Hillel's pasuk? Beis Hillel tarti shmas mino. Beis Hillel says we learn out both. Heim v'lo shneim heim v'loy v'lo doiseim. Frakti Gemara Beis Hillel nami yoksiv gam. Gam the Beis Hillel Kasha says you're right. According to Beis Hillel, the word gam does indeed come out to kasha. So that is Tana number 2, Beis Shammai, that holds Shinoi b'mekaymai oimid. Oimid Shinoi does not effect a change. And we move over to Tana number 3, Rav Elazar ben Yaakov Mahi. We're 10 lines down. Sadi Daled Amud Aleph. First word on line is he Detanyo. We learned in a Bryce and Sanhedrin. Rav Elazar ben Yaakov Aimer. Someone sold a saw of wheat, tachna, ground it, lasha, kneaded it, vafa, and baked it. V'ifresh mimena chala, and took off chala. Keitzad mivarich. How can you make such a bracha? Ein zem mivarich eliminates. This isn't a bracha. This is disgusting. It came from a stolen item. Val zeh ne'amar. Now this the pasuk says, "Boitzei beirech ni Hashem ni eitz Hashem." That a thief who recites a bracha is blasphemy to Hashem. How could he do such a thing? Now, just what's the bracha that we're referring to? Seems a little bit of a machlekes rishonim here. The simple reading would sound like the brachas on the separation of the challah, whereas some want to learn a little bit of different girsa that have just on the bracha on the food. But either way, it proves the Gemara that according to Vlad ben Yaakov, even though the food clearly changed, it was ground, it was kneaded, it was baked, it's a completely different entity. Still, there is no kinyan, shinoi b'mekaymai oimid. Continues the Gemara 15 lines down. The first one line is No'it Hashem or Shimon Elazar Maihi. Where's Rav Shimon Elazar that we see that shinoi b'mekaymai oimid Titania? Klal Zeh or Shimon Elazar Kol Shevach Sheshviach Gaz. Says Rav Shimon Elazar Klal. Any gains, benefits that the Gazlan improves the item. Yadai al ha'elyoina. He has the upper hand to receive them back. Ratza naitel shvachai, ratza amla arishal chalafanecha. You can either take the shvach or you can tell the owner, here's your item. Here, and you return it back to him as it is now in the new improved state. So says the Gemara, my kamar, what's going on in this din of Rav Shimon Elazar? My kamar, Amar Rav Sheshes Achi kamar. He shabicha noitel shvachai. Says Rav Sheshes, you know what's going on over here is the fact that the Gazlan made the item greater, he gets that back. That's what he gave. Kachash. But if the item went down in value, Amar la rishacha lefanecha, why? Tishinei b'mekayma yoimed, the shinei remains in the original possession, meaning if the shinoi was considered a kinyan, the guy stole the item, he changed the item. If it was considered that he was kaina, he acquired the item, now he wouldn't have a choice. It's his item and he has to pay back that which he stole. He can't say arishal chalafanecha, just return the item. Proves the Gemara must be that shinoi has been mekayma that even after the act of stealing it still and making the item better, being mishana, changing the item, still considered in the possession of the original owner. Ask the Gemara, Yachi afilu shbiach dam. Says the Gemara, you don't understand. Even when he made it better, he should have to give it back in its current state, because it's not his; it's the original owner's. Says the Gemara, Amin netakanas hashavim. You're right. Bad Sam, he should be able to give it back in its current state. However, because of the takanas hashavim, we want people to do tshuva. We want people to return items. Therefore, we allow him to keep the shevach of the item. We continue with Tanam, number 5. Rabbi Yishmael Mahi. Where do we see that Rabbi Yishmael holds that Shini b'mekayim 20 lines down? The first line is he did Tanya. We learned in a brayso. Mitzvahs peya, excuse me. Lahavrish min hakama. What's the mitzvah peya? To separate from the standing crop. Lo hifresh min hakama. Hifresh min ha'imrim. Then you have to separate from the sheaves. Lo hifresh min ha'imrim. Then what? Mavish min hakri. Separate from the pile. Ad shaloi marchai. Before it's smooth. Marchav is smooth. Meiser. The noisein lo. You have to give off meiser and then give the peya to the poor people. Mishum Rabbi Yishmael Omer, Af Mavrish Mina Isa. Even if it's dough, you still have to take off the appropriate pay of another loy. So what do we see? Proves the Gemara that according to Rabbi Yishmael, clearly the shinoi doesn't create a kinyan, because even after the item was changed, we're seeing that you're allowed to simply return, not return, but give pay off of the item. Ask the Gemara, I don't understand. We have these 5 incredible Tanaim, and what? They're all learning. Like Beis Shammai, that Shina b'Mekayim made. But Beis Hillel argued, and we always know Allah is like Beis Hillel, so why would all these Tanaim go with Beis Shammai? Amar le'achi kamar. Loi nechliku Beis Shammai Beis Hillel, but Davar said, no, it's not just that Beis Shammai. Beis Hillel himself agrees that Shinoi b'Mekayim made. And that's the reason why all these Tanaim are going with such an opinion. Says the Gemara, Amar Rava. So that was Abaye. That was Abaye's statement that we began with today on Sadi Gimel and Beis. The Abaye taught us that Rav Shimon Yehuda, Beis Shammai, Rav Elazar ben Yaakov, Rav Shimon Elazar, Rav Yishmael all hold Shinoi b'Mekayma Yoimed, that the Shinoi keeps it still in the owner's possession. Asks Rava on Abaye, Amar Rava Mimai. Dilma, perhaps this is not the machlekes. Meaning, where did this all come from? Yesterday's discussion of Shimon Yehuda, who he held that the Shina is not created an acquisition by he who makes the change, and rather it's still possession of the original owner. Maybe Shimon Yehuda, is only over there by Tseva. The case of the die, why? It's fine. You can remove the dye through detergent. And that's the reason why it's not the Shini created an acquisition. Number one. Maybe only over there the Beishamai say that when we're discussing the Esnan, was because it's malus. It's disgusting to bring such an animal as a carbon. That you want to make a bracha after changing the item. Shimon Elazar maybe only said his din with regarding to achasha the hadar, deterioration of the item, that it could go back. So says the Gemara, why don't we learn from there, asking on this last din of Peah? Manasaniyim shiny by Rav Yehuda. Manasaniyim is different by Rav Yehuda. My time the Rishmal Mishat Savar. Shinoi einoi koine oidelma ba'alma ksaver shinoi kanavach mishadach tazavi seira. Meaning, we have a precedent that by peya b'davka, by manis aniyah, by giving the food to the poor, specifically, there might be an extra reason. If you're going to tell me time the Rishal mishadach ksaver shinoi einoi koine tazavi seira because Rachman alamali. So what are we learning over here? That there's an extra taza, there's extra jarasha, teaching you give the payah. What do you mean? It has nothing to do with that. There's no kinyan via shinoi. Visu, and furthermore, the rabbanan tazavi seir to kachachman alamali. Mi baile lech letanya. Mavke karma vishkin levaker ubitzrai chayver devlezu shivcha shikho bepeyo bottom in a meiser. So proves the Gemara that's the last din of Peah. But at the end of the day, the Gemara is a bomb kasha. Abaya, you're telling me these 5 incredible Tanaim all hold Shinoi b'mekaymai I made. But how do you know that's true? Maybe it's only in their unique scenarios. Says the Gemara, so what's Lamaisa? 4 lines from the Y lines. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel halacha ki Rav Shimon ben Elazar, that Shinoi does not create an acquisition, a kinyan, in the case of the tzava of dyeing the item. Ask the Gemara, really, does Shmuel concur? Amar Shmuel taught us Ein Shav Lo Likanav Lo Likazan Elin is Zakin. Shmuel said that we don't evaluate that when one steals an item and it dies, we don't evaluate it by allowing him, this goes all the way back to the beginning of the Masechta, by allowing him to keep the Nevela and pay the difference. Rather, he does keep the Nevela and pays for the full animal. He can't return the Nevela. Elul and Zakin only for damages, that's when we say we evaluate the Nevela. So, according to Rava, that he explained, Ki kam Rav Shimon Elazar hasa b'achasha dahader like kasha. Ki kam Rav Shimon Elazar dishin b'mkami oimed b'achasha dahader. Chi kam Shmuel hasa mein shem l'gan v'ligazel and he's talking b'achasha dahader. So according to the way that Rava explained, everything is good. El Abaye. But what do you do according to Abaye? Da'amar ki kam Rav Shimon Elazar b'achasha dahader kamar. Michael and Meimar. According to Abaye, we have a kasha. We have a stira in Shmuel. Says the Gemara, Abaye Masni Hachi, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, turning over to Sadidalim Abeis, Amar Allah Shimon of Elazar, Velohi Svira Lei. He said, looks like Shimon Elazar, but he does not paskin that way, but rather, Shmuel is just teaching us that there are those that hold that we go to Shimon Elazar, that Shina does b'mekayim ma'ayim, but Shmuel himself is not of that opinion. And with that, we turn over. We're on Tzadidalam Abeis. We're on the second line. And says the Gemara, okay, so we're sort of leaving this off as Machlekes Abaye and the Rava as to what is the opinion of all these Tanaim. And now continues the Gemara, Amar Rav Chia, Barabba Amar Rav Yechlan Tvar Torah, Midaraisa, says Rav Chia Barab, Gzela Nishenes Chayzeres Beine. Someone steals an item and it actually is changed, it's returned in its current state. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, "Vishav zigzela asher gazal mikol makaim." You return the gzela that you stole in any scenario. Vimtaimer mishta seino mishta takanas shavim. As we explained, though, that's only because we want people to be able to return it, and that's why the din is different. Says really miyam reichlan hachiv amrav yechlan alochi kistam mishnah utnan lo hispek linna lo yachet savai potter. The Didim of Arshlimine, Rav Yechlan Kyunchikos Leitim Mishufin, Vasakalim, Davlishina, Yachaizer, Libriasa. So we're saying that in each of these scenarios, we have to always bear in mind what type of shinoi is it. Is it a shinoi that is reversible, a shinoi that's Chaizer Libriasa, or not? Now, once we mentioned one takana derabanan allowing takanas hashavim, allowing people to return the item in a more agreeable fashion, says the Gemara Tana Rabbanan. The two dots about 15 lines down, Hagazlanim umalvi ribis shech ziri. Gazlanim, or those who lend with ribis shech ziri, that what do? They want to do tshuva, and they want to return that which they stole to the people. Ein mekablin mehem, the one that was stolen from should not accept it from them. Ve'hamekabel mehen in ruach hachamim noichei menu, and if you accept it back from them, Chazal are not happy. Amar Rav Yechlan explains Rav Yechlan b'mei Rebbe nishtas mishtazu. Detanya ma'isva demechashay b'kish lasis tshuva. Amar lo yishtay reika imatay zed tshuva. Filav neidei no shalach. One wanted to do tshuva, but his wife said, "Guess what? If you start returning everything you stole, you got nothing. Even your belt, you're going to have to return." And therefore, you know what happened? He's like, "You're right, Taka." He didn't do tshuva. At that moment, they were mitaking that Hagazlanim umalvei ribish echziru ein mikabel mehem ve'amakabel mehen ein ruach hachamim noichai menu Chazal. We're not happy if you actually accept it from them. Why? To encourage people to return that which they stole. Meisvei asked the Gemara, if one's father lent the ribbis and he leaves them over some cash, they don't have to return it. So what's the obvious implication? Inu, the child uloi. Only the child doesn't have the obligation to return it. But it sounds clearly that the father did, yes, have a din to return it. What do you mean? You just told me that we don't accept it from him. Says the Gemara as follows. B'dinu, really, really, the father doesn't have to return it either. And that which we said, Misham de Kabayi lemisnei seifa. Because you want to learn in the seifa, niach lamaviyam para vitalis chol davar hamisuyam, or any defined item that the father left over that wasn't his. Those chayavim lahachzer misham kavod avihem, because of their father's kavod, that you don't want to have stolen articles that he stole in your possession. Tani reisha nami b'didu umimnei kavod avim chayavim leachzir. Says the Gemara, I read that wrong. Tana Reisha Nami Biditu. So the Reisha also spoke about by him. So ask the Gemara on the last narrow line, Umimnei kavod avim chayav lahachzir. Because of the honor of your father, that's what you're telling me, that's what you have to return the item. Ikri kan, why don't we read the pasuk? That a nasi you should not curse. It's only when he's doing the ma'isei, meaning so that there's only a din of kavod if someone is acting appropriately. But if this father lent with ribbis and has all these stolen items, why are we caring what the kavod, what it looks like for him? Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Pinchas b'sha'asa tshuva. The father did tshuva. He asa tshuva, my boy gabei, boy laturi. What do you mean he did tshuva? You did tshuva? All the stolen items were by you. Says the Gemara, no. Unfortunately, the father was nifter before he had a chance to return to all the items. Says the Gemara, Tashema Gazlanim Amalvei Ribis Avalishe Gavu Machzirin. Avalishe Gavu Machzirin. Even though they're collected, they return it. Says the Gemara, Gazlanim Mashe Gavu Ika. What does it mean collected by Gazlanim? Guzzle. It's not a collection. You stole the item. Eleima hagazlanim, umayni umavle ribis. Someone who lent with the ribis, avamishe gavu, you collected the ribis, machzirin, you have to return it. What do we see? We see that you, yes, have to return the ribis, but we just said a moment ago, Takana, you don't have to, so that people want to do tshuva. Hami machzirin, he has to return it, but they ain't mikavlin ehem, they don't accept it from him. Elalama machzirin, says the Gemara, so why is he returning it? Latzeis b'dei shamayim, to fulfill his obligation in heaven, meaning he has to do his part. His part is to return it, but they have to do their part to not accept it for the takana that people continue to do tshuva. We'll pick it up from the bottom of here of Sadidalad on the base, B'siyata Dishmaya.